Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to get our deploy process happening in the cloud using GitHub Actions, which comes with many benefits, such as not having your keys inside the script that we're running to do the deploy, as well as letting someone else's computer essentially do all the heavy lifting here. It's nice too because you can set up different environments. We could have for our app a stage environment and a production environment and have them mapped to specific branches in GitHub. It's just really the way to do things, in my opinion. So just as a quick review, we have our lovely Flutter app running on a domain through Cloudflare. If we view the source of this, we will see that the base href right now is 0.0.5, and that's where all the code for this version of our build, which is the orange version of our demo app, is hosted essentially. Just as a reminder, in the S3 bucket here, if we go to the bucket that's holding it, we'll see the 0.0.5 one there, the index.html that's being served, as well as a version, etc., etc. Now, on Cloudflare, we have the DNS set up. It's pointing basically to that bucket. Anyways, let's get into this. So if you haven't used GitHub Actions before, it's basically a way you can trigger something to run when a commit happens, or when a pull request is made, or various things like that. And for GitHub, it is specific. We just have to create a magic folder called .github, and inside that folder, we want to make another folder called workflows, because they have other things you can do too. And then inside here, we're going to make a file. We're just going to call it deploy.yaml. So we're using YAML. I'll use YML. I believe YAML will work as well. There's not really anything different between those two. And we're going to do some stuff in here. So this is, if you've used Docker, this is in some ways similar to kind of doing Docker. Like you're basically like creating, a procedure of events to run to build your code. The difference with this is we're not actually, we're not essentially like setting up like a server that's going to host and run our app. Although we're going to be, booting up a server. The server's job is just to, process and do the things like the Flutter build and deploy it to Amazon, to the S3 and all that kind of stuff. So there's plenty of good examples for this, and I'm going to be sort of pulling in things and not typing it out because it's not really, I'm not like, oh, I have, this entire thing memorized of how to do this. Usually when I'm looking for a GitHub action, I find something similar that I need and tweak it as needed. Or it's a lot of the time you can just rely on something like ChatGPT to, help you do it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have a name to give this. And this is so that when it's showing up on GitHub in our actions tab, we can, see what it is, because you might have multiple actions, potentially. So we're just going to call this name, and it's YAML. So, yet another markup language. And we are going to do it that way. Then the next part I want is essentially we have on. So we're saying like on a certain kind of event. And in this case, on a push event. And we can say on these specific branches. And for our cases, we're just going to worry about main right now. I have this weird thing happening here. Missing property jobs. Yeah, because we haven't really gotten there yet. Speaking of, the next thing we want are the jobs. So this is basically like the trigger right here. And this is like, hey, what do we want to do? And what we'll do is give this a name, basically, because you can have multiple jobs within one workflow. We're only going to have one. So we're going to call it build deploy. But you could actually break it into like the build step and the deploy step. I'll leave that to you. And what we want to do now is do runs on. And oh, look, it's kind of auto-completing for me. That's pretty nice. And then runs on. This is basically like what server image essentially do we want to start with? And we're just going to use Ubuntu latest. A good reason to use this is if you want to set up like caching and stuff of your artifacts. A lot of stuff is supported just using, the latest version of Ubuntu. But you can, use specific versions of Ubuntu. You could use CentOS. Actually, I don't really know for sure. You can look that up on your own. But yeah, we're just going to use Ubuntu latest, and that's just a version of Linux, a pretty popular one. Next thing we can do is there's some environment variables, essentially, we're going to want to make available to this script. So we can do env. And here I'm just going to paste some stuff in and explain it because it's easy for me to make a typo, and we don't want that. So we're going to put in our AWS Access Key ID, and you'll see here, hey, I'm not actually pasting in it anymore. Instead, we are just putting a reference to something in our secrets. And that will make a little bit more sense in a bit, but we're basically saying, hey, we're not actually going to put our Amazon code in here, our tokens and stuff. We're going to make it something that we're going to store securely elsewhere. Same with the access key, especially the access key, because that's super secure. We don't want people getting that. We're going to do the region. We're just going to hard code the region. You could, of course, make this a secret as well, just not necessarily for purposes of security, but just purposes of maybe you have multiple, maybe you use US West 2 for like your staging environment and something else, for production. Who knows? But these are the variables we really care about here. Okay, so that's build deploy. Now we did runs on env. The next thing we need to do is steps. So what steps are going to be in this? And what we can do, first of all, in our steps is similar to kind of like runs on. We can use something that as like a sort of a starter plate. And we're going to use actions/checkout at version 4, v4. So this just is something built into GitHub that it can pull down and do the git checkout and all that kind of stuff. Now we want to give a name to our first step. So basically uses just saying all the steps are going to use, this. And now we want to, have a step. And the first thing we want to do is set up Flutter. So we're just going to call it set up Flutter. Sounds good. And in here, we want to say uses. And similarly, we can pull in a GitHub repo that already has, this for us. It's called, this one I'm using is sabutso/Flutter action at version v2. And with this, we can pass in a parameter. And we can say we want to use Flutter version. So we're just basically passing something to, this, saying we want to use specifically, in my case, we're going to use 3.29.2, I believe. Let's just double check. What am I using right now? We'll do Flutter version because it's nice, you want to, not that it has to be, but ideally you're going to be working locally in the same version of Flutter that you're going to be building, because otherwise you might have, problems that came up that you're not seeing locally. So actually, sorry, I'm using apparently 33.0.1. I think we can just use this whole thing. So let's just do that. Even though this is just the example app and it won't really matter, it should work on many versions. Okay, so that is just going to set up Flutter. That's basically this script right here goes and installs Flutter at this specific version, which we obviously need to do our build. The next thing we're going to want to do, and this part's very exciting to me, we're going to actually parse the version from our YAML file. So let's go to our pubspec.yaml, and let's actually change it now to 0.0.6, because I believe in our deploy script that we were using in the last one, we're at 0.0.5, so it might be nice to go up. So I'm going to save that. And what should we call this? We'll call it parse version. Parse version. All right, great. And here we're going to give an ID called version, ID version. And what we want to do is, what do we want to actually run when we do this? Because we're not just pulling in a thing right now. We're actually going to write our own, code essentially. And we're going to run, and it's actually multiple lines. So a good way to do that in YAML is you can put a bar character, a pipe character, if you want to call it that. That way we can actually have multiple lines without it, being confused. So here I'm pasting this one in because if I tried to type this on the stream, there would be for sure a mistake. So what we're doing right here, this is, a shell command. Basically, we're doing a grep on a specific file. So the file that we're actually doing on, we're basically setting a thing called version, okay? We're echoing out this into something called GitHub repo, GitHub output. So this grep function will look for version within the pubspec.yaml file that's inside our repo, and it's going to do like a cut, and it's going to whatever. And basically what it's doing is it's finding out, what does this say? Actually, specifically, what is this? Because we're actually getting it before the plus sign here. You'll see we're cutting on that plus. So shell code can be a little bit confusing. Grep can be a little bit confusing. These are the great things that also you can, if you're just like completely overwhelmed, I'm sure you could just Google like, how can I, get the version code from here. Or you could use ChatGPT or whatever, whatever you like, and it'll do a good job. It's good at that kind of stuff. It's good at regular expressions, It's good at the tedious, difficult things for sure. So that's going to, get us that variable, which is really nice because now, in our original deploy script, what was it, deploy.sh, we were like hard coding this in here. And in a big app, like in the app I was giving an example in version 1 that I've already, or in video 1, I have, previously I had sort of multiple sources of truth of the version. There was the pub spec. There was something I had to inject when I did my, with Sentry for logging to say this is the version. And then I had like a constant in my Dart code that was to show just the presentation layer, in the footer, like a little version number. So if there was a user error, we could be like, what version are you on? Maybe clear cache, which no longer we care about because this is solving it. The idea is I want to have one source of truth. And that's something I'm now doing on that project. And it's just great. One place where you say the version and, everything's going to pull from that. Okay, cool. So we have this thing called version. Yay. All right. The next thing we want to do is actually build the app, right? So let's give this, I think, a name of build Flutter web app. And inside here, we'll do run. And again, this will be multiple lines. So we'll do this lovely helper here. And we could probably just pull from here. I'm going to pull this Flutter build web, but now for the release, we don't have this variable anymore, and it works a little bit differently. Instead, we actually do kind of like what we did for these secrets here. We do the double opening and closing curly braces, and then within here, we can actually go steps.version, and that's why we gave this an ID. We can say, hey, this step.version dot outputs, because that's where the outputs are coming from, and then dot release, because we set this variable here, release equals whatever that version is, and we're putting in the GitHub output. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So yeah, we're going to do that. And because we want to actually go to, let's see, we have everything. Wait, I think that's everything actually that we need to do for this step. Now, in the case that you also wanted to inject some other variables to your build, like as Dart defines and stuff, you can of course do them all on one line, but this has to be one line. This is actually 2 lines. Like this would be like if you did this in your terminal, and copy and paste it, you copy this, paste it, hit enter. Copy this, paste it, do enter. But for Flutter build web, if we want to do Dart define, and then do whatever equals whatever, and keep doing that, this would get really long, right? So say you did want to move it to multiple lines, you can do a backslash, and then down here, you can start doing things like, whatever equals whatever. This is just like an off-topic, fun tip, because generally you're going to have like multiple things. And you have to remember like each time to have this backslash. And that's not something specific to GitHub Actions. It's just something specific to, Shell. If you want to, for organization and readability, have, one command on multiple lines, it's basically the way you have to do it. So we can get rid of that though, because this is all we actually care about here. Okay, cool. So that's the Flutter build step. Let's get a couple more steps in here. We're going to move the artifacts, move the build artifacts. So this is basically like building stuff, and we want to do something with those files, not just, we don't care about it just building. We need to actually move it somewhere, deploy it somewhere, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to paste this in as well. We've seen this before, or at least a variant of it. And I missed the actual run part. Let's do that. Run like that. So here what we're doing is this is very similar to what we're doing here, right? It's actually basically the exact same code. The difference is instead of getting release with just the uppercase release like we did here, we're doing it like we did here, steps.version.outputs.release. So nothing really changed. Now, the one thing we are doing, an extra step here, is we're going to essentially that version.json file, we're going to write some JSON to that based on this version here. And that's really for something we're doing ahead of time, because in part 4, we're going to make use of that file being something that we can publicly have access to. So that's just going to move our files around. Great. Now we need to upload to our S3. So let's do upload to S3. It's a good name. And this will be a run command again, multiple lines. And so let's see, our bucket, we probably need to get access to that. We can actually, I think, do that here, AWS bucket. And this could be something else we do as a secret key, that kind of thing. But obviously this isn't, in terms of security, like you don't have to hide from users what bucket it's coming from. They can figure that out just by, viewing the source of it and stuff. So we could use secrets.bucket name, or I could actually just put in our case, it's called Flutter from the last video. So we'll just, have that there for, future needs. Okay, cool. So now this is when we get basically our AWS code. So it's going to be essentially, this thing. And oh yeah, I see we've already kind of done this, right? We've done this backslash thing previous to even getting into GitHub Actions. So I'm explaining something, a little bit late, I guess, if you weren't familiar with that. So let's just paste all this stuff in. And I think we need one more indent on everything, one more indent on that, and obviously these ones too. Because YAML is an indent-based, markup essentially, as I'm sure you're familiar with. Okay, but there's some changes we want to do here. Like we can't release. We need to now change, obviously, to what we did in those many other places. So let's just grab both of these. There's two. And just do Command D to grab both and just paste it in the steps.version. Now for bucket name, we can actually do it this way. And that's because the bucket name is an environment variable we've set here, except we should probably call it the right thing, AWS bucket. And I'll change those in all these places. All right, I think that's pretty good for us. Let's test this out. So what's kind of cool about GitHub Actions is as soon as we actually push this, it's going to try and run this action. Will it work? We will see. But there's something we have to definitely do first. We need these access keys in there. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and then I'm going to put them in for myself. So we want to go to GitHub. So I have, if you watch the other videos, you probably already linked out to this, but let's just find our Flutter deploy. It's something Flutter web, I forget what it's called. Flutter web deploy, there it is. So we want to go into here and we want to go to our settings of the repo. So not our user settings, but for this repo. And we want to go to secrets and variables and specifically actions. And this is where we can do things. And we're going to make some repository secrets. And here is where essentially I would paste in, AWS access key ID. And I'd paste in that guy there, and I'm going to do the same for my secret. Of course, I don't have any interest in doing this part on stream, so I will pause for a moment, put those in. Just make sure, the keys line up exactly, just copy and paste them to be sure, because they need to be the same. And then, make sure you don't have any trailing spaces and stuff like that on all that. So give me one moment, and we'll be right back. All right. I've put them in. And what's really cool is like, you can't ever, once you have this in GitHub Action, as far as I know, you can't ever see them again. It's like completely hidden, even from like, even with like your two-factor authentication. Like I can go in and edit it, but editing doesn't actually show me the value of it. It just lets me like update it. So super secure. I mean, I like it. All right, so let's try this out. So for this, we need to obviously push. Now remember, we have it on the main branch. So, if you're already checked a different branch and you try and push, it's not going to do anything unless you've added that branch. And just keep in mind, like push doesn't necessarily mean pushing directly to it. It can also be you committed to your develop branch and you did a pull request and you merged that pull request. That's still considered a push in terms of GitHub. So we're going to commit this stuff, workflow, and I'm going to push. And then we'll go back to GitHub and we're going to just go back to our repo. I'll just start as if we're at our repo just to walk you through it. And we can go to the Actions tab and we'll see that our workflow is running. It's got, the only reason it says workflow there is because that's my commit message that I made, which is not really a great commit message, to be honest. Look, we have an error. So that means we're doing something, wrong or right. Okay, I kind of expected this to be the case. I'm using like a really like alpha version. So let's actually change back our Flutter version to something more stable. We'll use 392 or 329.2 here. Like I said, in a real world, I would make sure it's the same version I'm working locally because of obvious reasons. But change Flutter version. But this is the example app, and I can tell you, I can be pretty certain that nothing has changed between those two versions in terms of the example app's implementation. All we've done is changed a color, and I hope that color still exists because I like it. Okay, so you're going to see, like, if I'm back on this page, it seems like it's still broken, and that's because it's only showing me the output for this one action. So I can go back here, and I can see the new one. Change Flutter version. Slightly better commit message. Still not great. Okay, so we can actually watch this in real time and hope that no more errors happen. So right now it's actually, installing Flutter, the specific version that we wanted. And we'll just wait for that. And there we go. Now it's, let's see. So it grabbed that value. You know, we could have actually, I think if we expand this, we might even see what the output was of it. Version grep. No, it doesn't tell us. But hopefully that worked, right? Okay, we have another error. So because Flutter Web Deploy requires SDK, it does require the wrong SDK. Oh gosh. Okay, one sec. We're just gonna go to our pub spec again. And yeah, because it's like pointed to this SDK, because I started this project just on the alpha version or maybe the beta version. Let me just replace that with something that will work better. I'm just going to grab this common guy here. So this is just SDK saying it needs to be greater or equal to 3.7, but less than 4. SDK version fix. Also not the greatest commit message, but it'll get the job done. There we go. So we'll watch this. Now, it's going to do the whole thing again. And if there's a lot of interest in this video and people in the comments are saying, like, how can I do this faster? I could, you know, maybe we'll do a part 5 in the future, because we can make this faster by sort of like caching things and doing, you know, build artifacts. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do to make GitHub Actions, you know, run faster, even on a custom thing. But that's, you know, out of the scope of this. And frankly, although I'm like, hoping this goes fast because I'm, you know, making a video on it and don't want to waste too many people's time. These kind of things, it's okay if they take a little while, because you shouldn't just be like rushing out builds like every, you know, 5 minutes. It should be something you do with care. And you know, if it happens so fast, it's just doesn't feel like you care enough. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way I look at it. All right, what do we have now? So it looks like we got further, I think, because I don't think this happened before. There we go. Okay, so now it's making the artifacts, and look, it's actually uploading the files to the S3. So that's cool. Did it work? It's hard to tell. Let's find out. I mean, let's just go here, and let's see if the app even loads. Be nice if it did. It loaded. Okay, now to find out if it worked, let's view page source. And, oh, you know, So something didn't quite work, it looks like, unless like my cache is getting in our way, which shouldn't be the case. No, it's not. Let's see. Okay, well, let's look in the bucket. Did 006 come up here? Okay, 006 did come up. Let's actually look at it. I'm going to look at this file. I have to download it, unfortunately. You can't just, you know, view a file on AWS. And let's pull this into VS Code. Yes, I trust it. I made it. Okay. So to be honest, I think what we did worked. In fact, I know it worked. It even updated the 6. I think there's just something, you know, messed up right now with our, you know, with our caching stuff. I'm going to take a quick look and let you guys know what might be going on. All right, we got it to work. It is now saying 0.0.6. And this will still be the same because we didn't make a change. Do I know why? I'm not actually exactly sure yet. What I did is I disabled the cache, so there's definitely something wrong here. I'm going to look into it, but let's just keep moving, and then I will explain what we need to fix in the future. So stand by for that. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're working, and just to really test this out now, let's go to our main.dart and let us change something else. Let's go to purple. And let's make sure in our pub spec we update this to number 7007 -m color change git push. And let's see if all this stuff works. I am confident that this part is going to work. And let's just, something that I find is annoying with this, I have to scroll all the way to the top. Or I mean, I could probably push the back button, but I don't like back buttons. But if you push home on your keyboard, if you have a big enough keyboard for it, it'll scroll to the top. Just a bonus tip there. And here we go, color change. So we're going to see this go through. I'm not going to waste people's time at this moment. I'm going to pause for a second, and we'll come back when it's done. All right, looks like we're good. Let us go back here, and we should see a purple, if I'm not mistaken, when we refresh. Boop, 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 boop. And there's our lovely purple. It's kind of a pinkish purple, but that is the right color. Okay, great. So our GitHub action is working, and we have this going. Now, I told you I would tell you what's going on in the cache, and if you stand by with me for one more moment, I will give you the rundown.